Ahoy! I've once again scanned and surveyed the entire PvP area of the Deep Desert. As you can see, the nodes are on here, and I've made a map for you. As always, if you appreciate this kind of info, subscription, comment, anything that helps would be greatly appreciated. The way the map works was changed quite substantially again, or rather the layout of how concentrated things are. So we're gonna start from row I this time and make our way down. In row I, you can see we have some small deposits here in I1, and that is just about it. There are supposedly some medium spice flows in sector I2 and I3, according to the Planetologist website. I couldn't find those yet. And then getting to I4, we can see a small amount of stravidium and titanium towards the bottom. Nothing super crazy. I5 is more interesting. We have a testing station here, as well as Stravidium Island number 1. You can kind of see this extends further down to H5 as well. Very high concentration here. According to the Method GG loot table, aside of the standard loot that you're getting this week, this testing station specifically drops the Regis triple shot repeating rifle. So if you're a fan of the triple shot sniper with a poison effect as well, this one will have the highest tier of that this week. I6 is once again empty, supposedly has medium and small spice fields sometimes. I7 also empty, but then in I8 we can find the first large spice field. This is pretty important this week because there are not many ring mouth fields this week compared to last week. I think we had 6 or more last week, and this week we have 4. I9 is very empty. Making our way down to H9 and going backwards this time, H9 itself is empty too. But if we go over to H8, there is quite a bit of interesting stuff here. So down here we have a control point as well as a shipwreck and some titanium and stravidium. And a bit further up here we have a very significant amount of stravidium as well. So another stravidium island right here. On top of that we also have a control point. Again, this is very close to the spice field, the ringmouth, that is right here in I8. So if you're looking for stravidium and spice, or maybe the shipwreck, it's all together here. This shipwreck is particularly interesting because it drops the shell burster, which is a scatter gun that applies a fire damage effect on hit. So this could be of interest for quite a few of you. To the left of that, in sector H7, in the northeast, I found a crashed shipwreck, a temporary shipwreck. So whenever the map says X2, that's just the temporary shipwreck ones, not the permanent ones. And on top of that, towards the bottom of the same area, you can see a fair bit of stravidium and titanium. Further over to the west, we have H6. Fair bit of titanium and stravidium here, not an island, but a decent amount. Control point down here, and a little bit more to the north as well. So this should be a relatively decent farm spot as well. Kind of safe-ish, not too crazy. Just good amount of resources without being a fully concentrated island. Whereas if we go further to H5, that's the rest of Stravidium Island. So maybe people will fly over. They gotta be a bit careful still. Also, right here in the middle, we have another ring mouth. So that's something to be aware of. And I marked this as another potential point of interest because I saw another medium spice field here. So quite a couple spice fields around in general. Maybe an interesting area if you're looking primarily for spice. But again, you also have the risk of people coming over that are there for the stravidium. In H4, you have a control point as well as some stravidium, some titanium. Not exactly insane amounts though. Not necessarily worth finding because it's mixed between a bunch of iron. It's really messy to try and find it on there. Going further to H3, this spot doesn't technically have anything, but I saw multiple spice drops here, a medium one and a small one, very close to each other, so could be worth looking for spice as well. H2 has 2 control points here, a little bit of titanium and strav down there, but not really worth mentioning. And then a little bit more sprinkled around here, with another 3rd control point up in the corner as well. And around here there is also a potential crashed ship that can appear. In H1, we find a shipwreck to the north as well as a control point, tiny bit of titanium. This shipwreck drops Indira's Lullaby, a rifle with a 3-round burst effect. Moving on to G1, this is very barren, but apparently has a small as well as a medium spice field, and the exact same thing applies for G2 as well. So again, places that you can look for if you're just out there for spies. Further over to G3, we have our second testing station, as well as a fair bit of titanium strivium to the north and another control point. The G3 testing station is pretty interesting since it drops the Executors set, which gives you concussive mitigation against explosive damage. It is a heavy set, but if explosive damage is a problem to you, I think this may be applying for Thopter damage or potentially rockets, then this could be an interesting way to deal with that, probably also for grenades and stuff like that. So, haven't tested that, but the whole set seems to drop from here. Just gotta be very lucky, I guess, because you won't be the only one looking for it. East of that, in G4, there is nothing. Apparently, Plantologist found a crashed shuttle here. In G5, however, we have a little bit of Strividium just around here, and then moving on a little bit of titanium as well as a control point. G6 extends in the same way, a little bit of Strividium, a little bit of titanium, as well as another control point to the north. And now we're getting a bit of a deja vu here, because in G7, we also have a control point to the north, and also a little bit of titanium, a little bit of strividium around here on these small islands. G8 kind of finishes the whole story off in the same way. A little bit of titanium, a little bit of strividium around the north, and then a control point in the middle on the carbon island. G9 is an empty space, however, supposedly can have crashed shuttles. F9, once again, fairly blank. Little bit of resources to the very west here, but not even worth putting on the map because it's really just these two small ones. Sector F8 gives us another shipwreck. According to Method GG, this one drops Idaho's Charge, a jacket that reduces power drain from Suspensor use by 20%. I am unsure, maybe some of you know this, if this applies for Suspensor dashes as well, which would make this a little bit more interesting. F7 is a relatively blank space. I put a little marker here for titanium because it's pretty close to the border to PvE, and there's at least 2 nodes on here, so it's not too bad, I would say, if you're just hopping out for a tiny amount. F6 is really interesting because you can't really see it on the map here. You can see the control point, but you only see a little bit of titanium here, but this is actually Titanium Island. Especially on these off banks here, there is a lot of titanium, but for some reason the scans didn't really reveal it properly, even though there were plenty of nodes on there. So this is, in fact, as you can see from the footage, Titanium Island. F5 has another spice field right in the center, big ringmouth one. So right next to the titanium, pretty close to the border, pretty interesting. And then just one field over from there on F4, there's Strividium Island. So yeah, you get that too. Just all around here, this is all basically Strividium. Once again, the map is not really showing it properly, but we are continuing with quite a lot of hot zone here between all those areas. This also extends a little bit into E4. Just 2 islands and a big spice field right next to each other. F3 is very, very empty and nothing going on here really. Over in F2, there's a control point, a little bit of Strividium as well, and another control point here at the center. F1, a little bit further away from the hot zone, has another separate spice field, so maybe a little bit safer, ringmouth one here, if you're looking to farm spice and you're not right in the middle of the action, because there's not really much else around there. If we move down to E1, you can see there's a little bit of titanium and a little bit of Strividium around here, and there is a control point, but nothing really major. We're gonna go through E really quickly as well. There is another control point here, as well as a cave. Same thing in E3, control point and a cave. I'm not marking all of the singular titanium and Strividium that we can find around here. Sometimes it's really not that important, I think. Again, E4 has the gap here that is still part of the Strividium Island, and then other than that, it only has a potential shipwreck on the east side here. In E5, don't really have anything going on. In E6, pretty empty as well. E7, a little bit more, a little bit of titanium, a little bit of Strividium as well. I did mark that one. And then a few islands where you can build onto. Same in E8, just a little bit to build on, but not really much going on here. And E9 comes with another control point. and conveniently to the south of it, there's multiple Stravidium nodes around where people are building, so that's quite nice, I guess. So overall, a hot zone is definitely F4 to F6 as shown. Then there's a nice area around H8 and I8 where you can get Stravidium and Spice, and I5 and H5 if you want Stravidium and maybe Spice, as well as possibly a lab to go to instead of shipwreck. It kind of depends on which unique schematics you're after. So a few points with a bit of flexibility. If you want some peace and quiet with a reasonable amount of farm, I think the I2 to H2 area-ish is also pretty okay. But really there's a lot more ores across the entire area like last week, so ores should not really be a problem. You can farm that pretty much anywhere, especially if you're out with a scout. Where spice seems to be harder to come by, which in my opinion is a bit of a problem because spice is, I think, what people are mostly shorter on, which I personally find a fair bit harder to farm. So we'll see how that one gets solved in the long term. Thank you very much for watching, and if you're interested in more videos like this, then definitely subscribe and click the bell so you're notified. And thanks to my patrons for supporting this video. Duke Sloth, out.